Where Borders Disappear. Part 1. Strangers in the Same Light. Chapter 1. Tokyo Rain. The rain came sideways in Shimokitazawa. Marcus Wade had been in Tokyo for 4 days, and in those 4 days he had spoken to exactly 9 people, 3 hotel staff, 2 ramen shop owners, a man selling grilled corn outside Haryuku, a woman who asked him for directions he could not give, his VP of engineering back in Oklahoma City via a 10-minute Zoom at 3 in the morning, and himself. Counting himself, 9. That was fine. That was the whole point. He had left his phone's work Slack on Do Not Disturb the moment his JL flight broke through the clouds over Narita, and something in him had exhaled for the first time in what felt like years. Novice Core Technology had just closed a $42 million Series C. He was 38 years old. He had not taken a vacation in 2 years, and his last relationship had ended with a woman telling him, very calmly, that loving him felt like loving a very sophisticated machine, present, attentive, functional, but never truly there. He thought about that a lot. He was thinking about it now, standing under the narrow awning of a coffee shop called Kisuten Hoshi, watching the rain hammer the cobblestones of the covered shopping arcade, while people streamed around him like a river parting for a stone. Go in or don't. Stop performing the decision. He went in. The cafe was small the way all things in Tokyo were small, deliberately, architecturally, philosophically small. 8 tables. A handwritten chalkboard menu in Japanese with small English translations beneath. 2 old men playing shogi in the corner. A jazz record playing, something mid-century and American that felt both familiar and foreign this far from home. The smell of roasted single-origin beans and warm milk. He took the last available seat at the bar along the rain-streaked window. The woman beside him was already there. She was reading a worn paperback, García Márquez, he noticed, the Spanish edition, not a translation, and she had a café au lait in front of her that she had not touched in several minutes because she was too deep in whatever paragraph had caught her. Her locks were pinned up with what appeared to be a single lacquered chopstick she'd probably bought that morning. She wore a rust-colored silk blouse tucked into wide-legged trousers the color of cream, and on the table beside her coffee sat a small Midori notebook bristling with museum pamphlets used as bookmarks. Marcus ordered in Japanese, gently mangled but comprehensible Japanese, the kind that made the young barista smile in relief, and settled in. He did not look at her again. He opened his own notebook and began sketching the product architecture problem that had been living in the back of his skull since Denver. 5 minutes passed. Then, "Your Japanese is not bad," she said. In French. He turned. She had not looked up from her book. "Merci," he said carefully. "Yours is remarkable for someone reading García Márquez in the original." Now she looked up, and something happened in Marcus Wade's chest that he would spend the next several months trying to accurately describe and never quite manage. Her eyes were dark and amused and entirely unimpressed, which was exactly the expression he needed to see on exactly this day. She was beautiful in the specific way of someone who had never once arranged herself for someone else's comfort. "How do you know it is the original?" she asked, still in French. "Because the English translation of that sentence you just read would have been on the left page, and you turned right." A pause. Then the corner of her mouth moved. Not a smile, the precursor to one. "Shrewd," she said, switching to English. "You read García Márquez?" "In college. English only. My Spanish was exactly good enough to embarrass me." "And your French?" "Better than my Spanish. Worse than yours, clearly." "Most things are worse than my French," she said simply, and picked up her coffee. His name, he told her, was Marcus. Hers, she told him, was Simone. Simone Ardell Carter. She said all 3 names like they were a complete sentence. They talked for 2 hours. Not the way strangers talk, surface skimming, resume trading, but the way 2 people talk when they recognize, with a kind of cellular certainty, that this is a rare and finite window, and wasting it on pleasantries would be a crime. They talked about the particular loneliness of competence, about what it meant to be black and excellent in spaces designed to only tolerate one of those things at a time. They talked about art. She told him about a Basquiat acquisition she'd negotiated for the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art in Kansas City that had taken 14 months and 2 trips to Basel and 1 very long dinner with a Swiss collector who didn't believe a black woman could understand what Basquiat was saying. She had, she said, explained it to him in 4 languages. He had written the check. Marcus laughed. Really laughed. It surprised him. She asked what he built. He explained Novice Core, enterprise AI infrastructure for mid-market companies, the kind of technology that was invisible until it wasn't, until it was the skeleton inside everything a company did. She asked questions that were not polite questions, questions that got into the architecture of the thing, the ethical frameworks baked into the training data, the governance model. She asked them in the way someone asks about a painting they're deciding whether to acquire. She's evaluating everything in real time, he thought. She doesn't stop curating even here. He found it, improbably, erotic. "What hotel are you in?" she asked eventually, gathering her notebook. "The Klaska, in Meguro." She stopped, looked at him with an expression he could not quite read. "The Klaska," she repeated. "Yes. I am at the Ryokan Sonoya." She paused. "That is 2 hotels away from mine." "Yes." The rain had stopped. Neither of them moved. "Tomorrow," she said, "I was planning to go to Naoshima Island. The Art Island. The Chichu Art Museum is there. James Torrell, Monet's water lilies in a room designed specifically for them. I have been wanting to go for 6 years." "I have been wanting to go," Marcus said carefully, "since I read about it on the plane." She studied him for a moment with those curator's eyes. "You can come," she said, "if you are willing to let me talk about the art. I am willing to let you talk about anything." Something shifted in her expression, briefly, privately. Then it was gone and she was standing, tucking Garcia Márquez under her arm. 6:45, she said. The ferry terminal. Do not be late, Marcus. She said his name like she was deciding what to do with it. Chapter 2, Naoshima. He was there at 6:30. She arrived at 6:43, wearing a linen jumpsuit the color of slate and carrying a camera bag and a thermos. And when she saw him already there, she said nothing, only handed him the thermos, green tea, still steaming, and walked toward the ferry gate. He fell into step beside her. This is how it starts, he thought. Not with a question or an invitation, but with a thermos. With the assumption that you will be warm. On the ferry, she translated the safety announcements for him. First into Japanese from the PA system's rapid Osaka dialect, then into English, then for some reason into Portuguese, which made him turn to her. How many languages? He asked. Fluent? 6. Functional? 8. My mother was a translator at the UN. She believed a language was a room in a house, and the more rooms you had, the more people could come inside. That's beautiful. She was beautiful. She died when I was 22. She said it plainly, not as a wound, but as a fact. She gave me the languages, and she gave me the Garcia Márquez, and she gave me the belief that art is the only honest record of what it felt like to be alive in a specific moment. Everything else at a museum, the provenance, the attribution, the insurance value, is scaffolding around that central fact. Marcus was quiet for a moment. The inland sea stretched away on all sides, gray-green and massive and still. My father taught computer science at Langston University, he said. First HBCU west of the Mississippi. He used to say that code was a language too, that a well-written function had the same elegance as a good sentence. He made me read structure and composition alongside algorithms. I thought he was being eccentric. I think about it every time I architect something now. Simone looked at him. We were both given the same gift, she said. A parent who understood that meaning was the point. The ferry docked. They walked to the Chichu Art Museum in the kind of silence that does not need filling. Inside the Monet room, she stood absolutely still for 4 minutes. Marcus watched her watch it. 5 enormous water lilies canvases arranged in a white marble room designed to let in only natural light, so that the paintings changed as the day moved. She stood with her hands clasped at the small of her back, head slightly tilted, and he could see her mind working even from here, turning it over, measuring it, receiving it. There was something almost unbearable about the concentration of her. She looks like that at everything, he thought. I wonder what it would feel like to have that kind of attention on you. The full, unhurried weight of her. He did not realize he'd stepped closer until she spoke without turning. He painted these when he was almost blind, she said quietly. The cataracts changed his color perception. He was working with what he thought he saw, not what was actually there. And the result is the most emotionally accurate thing he ever made. Because the filter changed what he allowed himself to feel. Now she turned. He was closer than she had expected. He could see that in the way her breath caught, briefly, controlled, before she steadied. Yes, she said. Exactly. Neither of them moved for a moment. The light in the room shifted as a cloud passed outside. The lilies changed color. Then she turned back to the painting. There is a toral room next, she said. Gansfeld effect. You will feel like you are inside light. Lead the way. She led. He followed. And somewhere in that quiet white marble space, something between them that had started as conversation became something else. A current, a pull, an acknowledgement of gravity. They ate at a small restaurant near the port, sea bream over rice, cold sake, a shared plate of pickled vegetables, and the conversation expanded into the wide territory of 2 people who have stopped performing for each other. He told her about the isolation of being the only black tech CEO his investors had ever funded, about how he had learned to move through rooms in a specific way, confident enough to command, but calibrated enough not to frighten, and how exhausting it was to maintain that calibration at all times. She told him about the politics of the museum world, the way the acquisition committees, even the progressive ones, had a particular idea of what black art was for, uplift, protest, representation, and how she had spent a decade insisting that black artists were allowed to simply make art, make beauty, make strangeness. You're not just a curator, he said. You're an argument. So are you. He lifted his sake cup. She lifted hers. To arguments in unlikely places, he said. To Tokyo rain. They drank. On the ferry back, the sun was setting over the inland sea in colors that felt like something Toral might have staged, coral bleeding into violet into a deep, exhausted blue. They stood at the bow, not quite touching, shoulders an inch apart. The wind came off the water warm and salt-heavy. Simone reached over and tucked a loose thread back into the cuff of his jacket. It was the smallest gesture. It meant everything. She is deciding something, he thought. I can feel the machinery of it. He turned his palm up on the railing, very slightly. An offering, not an insistence. After a long moment, she placed her hand in his. They stood like that the entire ride back to shore. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing that needed saying. Chapter 3, Coordinates. That night, they found a whiskey bar in Ginza that fit 12 people on a good night, and ordered from a menu of Japanese single malts. The bartender narrated in careful, proud English. Simone's hand was on the bar between them, and Marcus's thumb traced slow circles at the base of her wrist, which she allowed, which she leaned into almost imperceptibly. Tell me something you want, she said. She was looking at the whiskey. He considered the question's real scope. To build something that outlasts me, he said. Not the company. I don't mean the company. I mean something. A space. I have money I don't know what to do with, and this specific kind of hunger for something I can't quite name. A gallery, she said. He turned. She was already looking at him. Say more, he said. You said it yourself. You have the money and you have a hunger you cannot name. I know that hunger. I have been feeding other people's version of it for 15 years. She paused, rolling her glass between her palms. A gallery is not a museum. A museum has a mandate, a board, a mission statement reviewed by committee every 3 years. A gallery, the right kind of gallery, is just a room that believes in something. The right dealer, the right space, the right eye behind it. The right eye, he said. She met his gaze. Do not flatter me. I'm not flattering you. I'm thinking out loud. She was quiet. The bartender poured 2 small glasses of a 15-year Yamazaki without being asked. Simone picked hers up. Where? She asked. Anywhere you want to go. The words landed. She felt them land. She looked at him with those eyes that evaluated everything and took the measure of a thing before she committed, and he held the look steadily, because that was the truth, and it was the only thing he had to offer. That is an enormous thing to say to someone you met yesterday, she said. I know. You don't know me. I know enough to know that I want to know more. That's how this kind of thing starts. He paused. At least that's what I hear. Another silence. Then she set her glass down, turned fully toward him on the bar stool, and looked at him for a long moment with an expression he was beginning to identify as the one she wore when she had decided something. I'm going to Kyoto on Wednesday, she said. The flea market at Toji Temple. Then Arashima. I want to be in the bamboo grove at dawn, before the tourists come. Then 2 days in Osaka. I have no plans from Wednesday onward, Marcus said. I know you don't, she said. I checked your itinerary. You left 3 days open. You checked? How did you check my? You showed me your notebook on the ferry. You write your schedule on the inside cover. She looked almost amused. You leave everything open, Marcus. You have been waiting for something to fill it. He stared at her. She picked up her whiskey. Wednesday, she said. 7 a.m. Do not be late. Chapter 4, Permission. Wednesday night in Kyoto, they took a room together. It was not discussed at length. There was a moment in the evening market at Nishiki, Simone holding up a small lacquered box, turning it in the lamplight, and he stepped behind her to look and his hand went to the small of her back as if it had always lived there, and she stilled under his touch in a way that was not reluctance. It was consideration. Full, deliberate consideration. Then she turned, looked at him with her whole face, and said, There's an inn I like on Okazaki. Traditional. 1 room. Is that what we're doing? If you want it to be. I'm asking if you want it. Yes, Simone. I want it. She nodded once, like a decision being filed. The Ryokan room had shoji screens and a low platform bed dressed in crisp cotton and a window that looked out on a small private garden where a stone lantern burned. Simone stood at the window unwinding her locks from their pins while Marcus poured tea from the cast iron pot the inn had left. He brought her a cup. She accepted it without turning. He stood behind her, close, and they both looked out at the lantern light. I need to tell you something, she said. Tell me. I'm not small about this. About this. A pause. When I am in, I am entirely in. I don't do casual with intention, if that makes sense. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just telling you what I am. He was quiet for a moment. Then he set his cup down on the windowsill and turned her, gently, by the shoulder. I haven't been entirely in anything in a long time, he said. But I want to be. With you I can feel myself wanting to be. That's all I can promise right now. That I'm not here for casual. That you have my whole attention. She studied his face in the lantern light from outside. I will want things from you, she said. I will want to know what they are. I don't ask twice. I won't make you. Something in her unlocked. She reached up and placed her palm flat against his chest. Not pulling, not pushing, just resting there, over his heartbeat. Okay, she said. The thing about Simone, Marcus would understand this only slowly, over weeks, over the arc of months, was that her desire had a specific architecture. She was not passive in it. She was not timid. She had needs that were precise and honestly stated, and she offered them the way she offered curatorial opinions, clearly, without apology, with the expectation that you would either rise to them or you would not. That night she said, I want you to tell me what you're going to do before you do it. I want to hear your voice. He understood immediately. You need the words. I need the words, she confirmed. It doesn't happen without the words. Then I'll give you the words. He pulled the single silk sash from the yukata they'd been given and held it up between them, a question made visible. Her eyes tracked it. Her breath changed. May I, he said. A beat. Then, yes. He tied her wrists loosely in front of her, not a trap, a frame, and then sat her on the edge of the low bed and knelt at eye level and said, I'm going to take care of you tonight. All of you. Tell me if any of it changes. She nodded. He said, I need your voice, Simone. I understand, she said. Tell me you're okay. I'm okay. And then, lower. More than okay. He was thorough and patient, and every action was narrated. Not clinically, but tenderly. The way someone describes something precious while they are holding it. She gave him her full sound, her full weight, and the call-in response of it built in layers until she was pulling against the silk sash not to escape, but because the resistance helped her stay in her body, stay present in the sensation of being held and guided and met. He moved through every part of her with his hands and his mouth with the focused attention of a man who had decided that her pleasure was tonight's only agenda, and she let herself be attended to entirely. Something she almost never allowed. This complete surrender of control to another person. And when she finally came apart, it was not quick or quiet, but slow and full, and she said his name twice in the process, both times like it cost her something precious. She trusts me, he thought, with something close to awe. She decided, and then she trusted completely. How rare is that? How extraordinary. When it was over, she lay against his chest in the dark, and he stroked her hair, and she said, very quietly, "Nobody has ever asked permission like that." Like what? Like they actually needed the answer. He pressed his lips to the top of her head. "I needed the answer," he said. Chapter 5, Osaka, Arashiyama, and the long way home. Arashiyama at 5:30 in the morning was exactly what Simone had promised. The bamboo grove in pre-dawn stillness, the lights silver gray and filtering through stalks taller than buildings, the sound of them moving against each other like a vast and patient breathing. It was the kind of place that made language feel insufficient. They walked slowly, not speaking. Simone had her camera out, shooting with quiet concentration. Marcus watched her work. This is who she is, he thought. This is the real work. Not the acquisition meetings, not the board presentations, the press releases. This. A woman alone in front of something beautiful, letting it matter. He took exactly one photograph. It was of her. In Osaka, they ate themselves into a state approaching religious devotion. Takoyaki from a card in Dotonbori, kushikatsu at a counter where the rule was you could not double-dip the communal sauce, and Simone said this in Japanese to the old man next to them, who had been about to violate this rule, and the old man laughed and told them. In dialect, Simone translated with glee that he was 91 and had been coming to this counter for 60 years and could double-dip if he pleased. They bought him around. That night in the hotel, a design hotel with a rooftop bath where they sat in the onsen-style pool under the Osaka skyline, Simone leaned her head back against the rim and said, "I want to go to Porto. Someday. I want to stand in the tiles at Sao Bento Station, and I want good port wine and fish, and I want someone to argue with me about Baroque architecture." "I'm available for that," Marcus said. She turned her head toward him. He was watching the skyline. "You would go to Porto with me." "I'd go anywhere with you, Simone. I think you know that." She was quiet for a long time. "You're going to make this very complicated," she said finally. "I'm just trying to be honest with you. That is what makes it complicated." On the last night in Tokyo, they walked back to the Kisuten Hoshi in Shimokitazawa, their café, already theirs after 5 days, and sat at the same seats at the window bar and ordered the same coffees and said very little. The city moved outside the glass, indifferent and luminous. "What happens when we go home?" Simone asked. He'd been thinking about it for days. "I go back to Oklahoma City and you go back to Kansas City, and we're not in the same country anymore." "We're not in the same country now," she pointed out. "Exactly. And somehow that hasn't stopped anything." He turned to her. "I'll come to Kansas City. Marcus, I'll come to the museum. I'm serious." She looked at him with an expression he had not seen before. Something unguarded, slightly afraid, which was significant because Simone was the least afraid person he had ever met. "You'd come to the Nelson Atkins. Every day if you'd let me." A long silence. "That would be very strange," she said. "I know. People would notice." "Good." She picked up her coffee and looked out the window. "Don't be late," she said. Softly. Part 2. The Space Between Airports. Chapter 6. Oklahoma City, 1 week after. Marcus sat at his standing desk on the 14th floor of Navascore's downtown office at 11:15 on a Tuesday night. City lights spread below him like a circuit board someone had left on, and was absolutely incapable of thinking about the product roadmap on his screen. Kyoto at 5:30 a.m., the light through bamboo. Her hands on the camera. The silk sash and the lantern light. The way she said his name on a ferry in the inland sea like she was deciding what to do with it. He closed the roadmap. Opened a new browser tab. Typed, Nelson Atkins Museum of Art, Kansas City, Missouri. The website was beautiful, clean, confident, clearly the work of a director who understood that a museum's digital presence was itself a curatorial act. The current exhibitions page, a survey of West African textile traditions. A solo show for a Kansas City-based sculptor. A newly acquired Alma Thomas work. He remembered Simone telling him about Alma Thomas, sitting in a whiskey bar in Ginza. She touched that acquisition. That Thomas is in a room she decided to put it in. He bought 2 round-trip tickets to Kansas City. Open dates. Then he texted her. "I looked at the website. The Thomas acquisition is extraordinary. When does the exhibition close?" 3 minutes passed. Then, March 14th. "What? I want to see it." A longer pause. Then, Marcus. Simone. Another pause. Then a single line. "First Saturday, 10 a.m. I'll leave your name at the desk." He put his phone face down on the desk and looked at the city below him. He was smiling like an idiot. He did not mind. Chapter 7. The Nelson Atkins. The Nelson Atkins Museum of Art sat on a hill in midtown Kansas City, like something from a dream of civic ambition. Classical stone facade, the block building's glass and steel addition jutting from the hill, like an afterthought that turned out to be the whole point. Marcus arrived at 9:50, stood on the steps in the February cold, and looked up at it. She chose this place. This is where she spends her days. This building is, in some important sense, her. His name was at the desk. A young assistant met him and brought him through to the Thomas exhibition. And then Simone was there in the gallery doorway in a navy wrap dress and low heels. Reading glasses she had not worn in Tokyo pushed up into her locks, looking at a canvas with the expression he already recognized as her working face. She heard him enter. Did not turn immediately. Let the moment be what it was. Then, "You came. I told you I would." She turned. Looked at him for a moment with that full, unhurried appraisal. "You look like Oklahoma City," she said. He'd worn a good suit. Charcoal, no tie, pocket square and deep amber. "Is that a problem?" The corner of her mouth. "No," she said. "Come look at this." She walked him through the exhibition the way she'd walked him through the cheat shoe. Not lecturing, but sharing. "This is what I see. This is why it matters." The Alma Thomas canvases were enormous explosions of color in concentric rings, abstract and musical and radiant. Simone explained that Thomas had started painting seriously at 69, after a career as a teacher, and had built this entire late-life language of color and joy. She made this in her 70s, Simone said, standing before a canvas of concentric gold rings. She was in her Washington, D.C. apartment. Her arthritis was so severe she could not hold a brush for long, and she made this. She titled it, Snoopy Sees Earth Wrapped in Sunset. Marcus looked at it for a long time. Why does it make me want to cry, he asked. Because it's an old woman looking at the whole world and saying it's beautiful, Simone said simply. That requires a kind of courage most people don't have. He looked at Simone. That is also what you do, he thought. You stand in front of the world and insist on its beauty. You have been doing it for 15 years in institutions that were not built for you, and you have not let them make you bitter. That requires a kind of courage most people don't have. He did not say it. It was too much, too soon. He filed it. He came back the next Saturday, and the one after, and the one after that. By the third visit he had stopped leaving his name at the desk, because Simone had added him to the list. By the fifth visit the front desk staff knew him by name, and the security guard named Ronald had opinions about which exhibitions Marcus would and would not enjoy. By the eighth visit Marcus had started bringing coffee. Her order memorized after Tokyo, oat milk flat white, 1 sugar, and her expression when he handed it to her was the thing he drove 2.5 hours each way to see. She doesn't say thank you right away. She takes it and wraps both hands around the cup and closes her eyes for just 1 second and then opens them and looks at him. That's the thank you. The whole thing is the thank you. They had dinner after the visits. They talked on the phone on the days between. Once, at 1 a.m. on a Wednesday, she called him and said, I'm looking at a proposed acquisition and I can't decide and I need someone to argue with me. And he sat up in bed in Oklahoma City and they argued about a contemporary Haitian artist's diptych for 45 minutes, and afterward there was a long silence and she said, You have a good eye, Marcus. And he said, I had a good teacher. And she said, Don't be sweet right now. In a voice that meant she needed him to not be sweet right now because she was in her apartment in Kansas City alone and he was 200 miles away. What do you need, he asked. A long pause. I need you to come here, she said. Very quietly. I'll be there by 4. He was there by 3:40. Chapter 8. What she needed. He let himself in with the keys she'd given him 2 weeks ago with no ceremony, just pressed it into his hand as he was leaving one night and said, in case, and walked back inside before he could respond. The apartment was a Simone Ardell Carter artifact. High ceilings in a converted warehouse building in the Crossroads Arts District. Walls covered not as decoration but as record, prints, original works, postcards from exhibitions, a child's drawing from a school outreach program framed like the Basquiat it sort of was. Books everywhere in multiple languages. A long oak table used as both a desk and a dining surface, covered in catalog proofs and exhibition notes. The kitchen smelled like the ginger tea she'd been making. She came from the bedroom in an oversized shirt, hair loose, no glasses, and the particular expression of someone who has been running on 3 hours of sleep and professional adrenaline for 3 days and has finally let it drop. She walked directly into him. Not an embrace, an arrival. Her forehead against his collarbone, her breath slowing. He wrapped both arms around her and did not say anything. They stayed like that for a full minute. The board rejected the Haitian diptych, she said into his chest. I'm sorry. They said the price point was too aggressive. What they meant was they don't recognize his name yet. She paused. I'm going to buy it privately and donate it in a year when he wins the prize he's going to win. That's slightly insane. That is precisely what it is. A pause. I do this occasionally. You buy art the institution won't take and then donate it when the artist becomes undeniable. Someone has to. He pulled back enough to look at her face. She looked exhausted and furious and entirely certain of herself. You are extraordinary, he said. I told you not to be sweet. That wasn't sweet. That was an assessment. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she took his hand and led him to the bedroom. He had a way of reading the register of her need and calibrating to it precisely. Tonight she did not need tenderness. She needed to be met with force and clarity, to feel the exact opposite of the diffuse institutional warfare she'd been fighting for 3 days. He understood this without being told. He had learned to understand it. He backed her against the wall with both hands on her hips and looked at her. Tell me what you need, he said. Quiet. Direct. She held his gaze. I need you to stop asking, she said. That's not how we do this. A breath. Then, I need you to take over. I need to not be in charge of anything for an hour. Good girl, he said softly. The words landed exactly where they were intended. He felt her exhale, felt the tension in her shoulders shift as she gave the weight of it over. He took her to bed and he was careful and he was present and he was absolutely in charge. And she gave herself over to it with the full, precise trust of a woman who had decided. And she was loud about what felt good and he was attentive to every signal. And when she finally told him harder, he gave her harder, and when she said his name it was not polished or composed, but raw and grateful and entirely her. This is it, he thought. This is what I meant about wanting to be entirely in something. This woman. This trust. This specific and irreplaceable person. Later, much later, the city quiet outside, the tea gone cold on the kitchen counter. She lay beside him with her head on his shoulder and his hand drawing slow lines up and down her arm. Tell me about the gallery, she said. He'd been working on it for weeks. Contemporary black artists, international scope. Not a statement gallery, not, look, we support black art, but a serious commercial and critical gallery with a real program. Full catalog, residency component, publishing arm eventually. I wanted to have the kind of voice that means something in 20 years. Who runs it? Someone with a 15-year institutional career who knows how acquisition works and how the collector circuit works and how to make an artist's career and who has been waiting for a room of their own. Simone was quiet. You've been planning this since Ginza, she said. I've been thinking about it since Ginza. I've been planning it since the Thomas exhibition. Another silence. Marcus, that's my career. I know. I have 20 years left at the Nelson Atkins. Or you have 20 years left of building something for an institution that's not yours. He paused. Or you go somewhere and build something that is. She stared at the ceiling. You said anywhere, she said. I meant it. Lagos, Dakar, Paris, Mexico City. Yes. Porto. He smiled in the dark. Porto. She turned onto her side and looked at him. You found me in Japan, Marcus. You understand what that means? That I found you in Japan. Tell me what it means to you. It means borders are only in the imagination. It means the place you think you're from is not necessarily where you belong. It means, she paused. It means I was in a cafe in Tokyo in the rain, and you sat down next to me, and now we're here. She gestured at the apartment, at him, at the general shape of the months between then and now. This is not a small thing. No, he said. It is not. She studied his face. I'm scared, she said. I know. I'm scared too. Of what? Of wanting this as much as I wanted, and having it be real. He reached up and touched her face. Nothing good has ever felt this immediate. Usually I think immediate means not real. But then I think about you standing in the bamboo in Arashiyama at dawn, and I know that was not a feeling. That was a fact. She closed her eyes. His thumb traced her cheekbone. Okay, she said again. Just like she had in the ryokan. The same word, the same quality, a door opening from the inside. Okay. Tell me about the gallery. Tell me everything. We'll figure out the geography. The geography is wherever you want to be. She opened her eyes. Let's start with Porto, she said. I want to stand in those tiles. Then we'll go stand in the tiles. She smiled, fully, openly, without the curatorial reserve, and it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen in his 38 years. He told her so. She said, that's a very sweet thing to say. He said, I know you told me not to be sweet. I changed my mind, she said and kissed him. Chapter 9. How the Current Runs. There were two kinds of evenings now. The Kansas City evenings, her apartment, her city, her rhythm. The Crossroads neighborhood alive with galleries and restaurants. Simone moving through it with the proprietary comfort of someone who had chosen a place and made it hers. Marcus learning the neighborhood block by block. The coffee shop she liked better than the one closer. The bookshop owner who saved things for her. The dim sum place on Sunday mornings where the carts came fast and she'd taught herself enough Cantonese to negotiate. And the Oklahoma City evenings. His world. The 14th floor at Novice Corps and the quiet house in the Mesta Park neighborhood he'd bought at 32 and never quite filled. When she came to him, the house became something different. She installed herself in it the way she installed art, with intention, finding the right wall for herself in every room. She left a cardigan on his reading chair. She put a print she'd brought, a small Deborah Roberts collage, on the wall of his study without asking. And when he came in and found it there, he stood in the doorway for a long moment and felt, for the first time, that the house was finally inhabited. You can move things if you don't like where I put it, she said from the kitchen. It's exactly right, he said. A pause. Yes, she said. It is. The physical between them had not diminished. If anything, the months had sharpened it, familiarity adding precision, trust adding permission. She knew what she wanted from him, and she asked for it clearly, and he gave it without reservation, with the particular attentiveness of a man who understood that her desire was not something to be managed, but to be met. On a Tuesday night in March, she called him from Kansas City, her voice low, careful, the cadence of someone who had been thinking about saying this for several days. I need you tonight, and you're not here. He recognized the register. His whole body responded to it. Tell me, he said. I've been thinking about you all day. About Kyoto. About the silk. He closed his office door and sat on the edge of his desk in the dark. What do you need from me right now, Simone? A breath. Your voice, she said. Just your voice. Tell me. He gave her his voice. He told her exactly what he would do if he were there, in the specific and deliberate language she needed, not a fantasy, a promise, a detailed and tender accounting of every place he intended to put his hands. She gave him her breath, her sounds, the occasional word that told him to continue. And he continued, and the current between them ran across 200 miles of telephone wire and arrived exactly where it was needed. When it was over, she was quiet for a moment. Then, come this weekend. I'll be there Friday night. Early. As early as you'll have me. Bring the good whiskey, she said. Not the scotch. The mellow corn. Done. Another pause. Softer now. Marcus. Yeah. I'm a pause. A choice being made. I'm glad you were late to the ferry that day. He smiled. I was 11 minutes early. You were psychologically late. You needed me to demonstrate the stakes. He could hear her smiling. Go home. Sleep. I'll see you Friday. Sweet dreams, Simone. They will be, she said. Because of you. Don't let it go to your head. Chapter 10. Small gifts and long distances. He had a habit, she discovered slowly. He read her. Not in the obvious way, not her words or her opinions. Those were freely given. He read the smaller things. The way she'd mentioned once, in passing on a phone call, that she'd always wanted to see the Kara Walker installation at the Tate Modern. The way she'd said the word Porto so many times that it was clearly not just a place, but a symbol for something. The way she described the small coastal region in Senegal where her mother had been born, Casamance, and how she'd never been. He filed all of it. In April, she came to his office to find a coffee table book on the table in his lobby, published catalog from the Tate's Kara Walker retrospective, with a note that said simply, "For when we finally go." In May, she opened her apartment door to find him holding a box of azulejos tile samples from a Portuguese ceramics importer in New York. "For the mood board," he said, "for the gallery in Porto." In June, he handed her a printed itinerary. Ziguinchor, Casamance region, Senegal. 10 days in August. Your mother's coast. She stood in his kitchen with the itinerary and was perfectly still for 30 seconds. Then, "You booked Casamance." "I booked Casamance." "How did you even know?" "I mentioned that once. On the phone. In passing." "I listened to you, Simone." He said it simply, without performance. "I have been listening to you since a café in Shimokitazawa, and I do not stop." She pressed both hands over her face. "Don't," she said, voice muffled. "I just did my makeup." "I know. That's why I'm telling you now instead of later." She laughed, a real laugh, undone. He crossed the kitchen and took her face in his hands and tilted it up, and she had, in fact, not ruined her makeup. And he kissed her, and she kissed him back with her whole self, hands in the lapels of his jacket, and it was urgent and grateful, and a little desperate in the way of people who are still half surprised that this is real. "I'm going to say something," she said against his mouth. "Say it. I love you." "I'm not. I don't say that lightly. I don't say it as a reflex. I've said it to 2 people in my life, and I mean it as a commitment every time." He kissed her into silence. Then, "I love you. I have been in love with you since the ferry to Naoshima, when you put your hand in mine, and it felt like something I'd been waiting for without knowing I was waiting." She looked at him. "We are," she said carefully, "in a genuinely ridiculous situation. 2 Black Americans who met in Tokyo and are now planning a gallery in Porto, while maintaining apartments in landlocked American cities, while flying back and forth constantly, while going to Senegal in August." He nodded gravely. "It is completely absurd," he agreed. She looked at him. "I want to be absurd with you," she said. "That's the most romantic thing anyone has ever said to me." "Don't push it," she said and kissed him. Epilogue, Porto, 18 months later. The gallery was on a street in Porto's Bonfim neighborhood, a former textile warehouse with high ceilings and the original wooden floors, wide-planked, creaking, alive under your feet, and windows that looked out on a courtyard where they'd planted a single jacaranda tree that was not yet blooming but would. The name was Ardell. Simone had argued against using her name. Marcus had said that the gallery needed to be legible as something, a vision, a signature, a declaration, and that her name was already that. She had looked at the sign above the door for a long moment on the day it was installed and said nothing, but she'd reached for his hand. The opening was in March. It rained. The same sideways rain that had pushed him under an awning in Shimokitazawa 2 years before, and he stood outside the gallery door in his good suit watching it come down and thinking about that day. The jazz record, the García Márquez, the woman at the window bar who'd spoken to him in French without looking up from her book. Simone came to stand beside him. She wore a dress the color of deep red wine and no jewelry except the gold ring on her right hand, a piece she'd found at the flea market in Toji, which seemed right, which was entirely the point. She looked at the rain. "It's like Tokyo," she said. "I know." She leaned her head against his shoulder. Inside, through the gallery windows, the first exhibition was lit and ready. 12 artists, 6 countries, 4 continents, all of them saying something about what it meant to be alive in this specific moment. The collectors were beginning to arrive. The young assistant Simone had brought from Kansas City was greeting them at the door. "We should go in," Simone said. "In a minute." They stood in the rain for another minute. Maybe 2. Somewhere under an ocean, the ferry to Naoshima was still running. The bamboo at Arashiyama was still breathing. The Alma Thomas canvases were still full of light. The cafe in Shimokitazawa was still open on rainy evenings. The world was full of places where 2 people who were supposed to find each other could find each other, if they kept their eyes open, if they were willing to let a small rain change their plans, if they knew how to listen. "Ready?" he said. She lifted her head from his shoulder, looked at the door. "I've been ready since the ferry," she said. He opened the door. She walked through it. He followed. The end.